Before sunrise on the 22nd of September 1979, an unusual double flash was recorded above the South Atlantic by a satellite known as the VELA satellite. Officially, the cause of the flash remains unknown, and some information about this event is still classified. In this video, we'll be looking at the incident that has been dubbed the VELA Incident. The United States established the VELA satellite in the 1960s for the specific purpose of monitoring compliance with the 1963 Partial Test Ban Treaty. The VELA satellites were designed to detect nuclear detonations and monitoring compliance with this treaty. In total, 12 satellites were built, divided into two designs: the VELA Hotel design and the Advanced VELA design. The VELA Hotel series were designed to detect nuclear tests in space, while the Advanced VELA series were designed to detect nuclear explosions in space as well as in the atmosphere. The satellites would launch in pairs over the course of 3 years: 1963, 1964, and 1965. The most effective apparatus on the VELA satellite was something called a bang meter, which were tuned to detect nuclear detonations. In over a decade of operation, the network of unblinking electronic eyes had yet to record a single false positive with the atomic bomb signature. But in 1979, that would change with the incident that would cause some controversy surrounding the VELA program, and that is the incident known as the VELA Incident. In the early hours of the morning of September 1979, the satellite known as VELA 5B detected a double flash originating somewhere around the South Atlantic Indian Ocean. The flashes reported by the satellite could have been characteristic of an atmospheric nuclear explosion of 2 to 3 kilotons. It started with a brief but intense flash, which was followed by a second, longer flash. As this report from VELA 5B strongly suggested that the cause of the flashes was a nuclear detonation, it quickly became a cause for concern, and a lot of questions were soon asked. What was the source of this signal? Was it in fact a nuclear detonation? And if so, which nation was responsible? Or was it simply a technical malfunction of some kind, or even a natural celestial phenomenon? An investigation was soon launched. The satellite's sensors were only able to narrow the area down to a 3,000-mile radius, and from available data it appeared that the incident occurred near Bouvet Island, which is the world's most isolated piece of land. Bouvet Island has its own interesting history. It's home to a Norwegian automated weather station, and it has its own mystery in the form of an abandoned lifeboat of unknown origin that was found there in 1964. The VELA satellite was not the only thing that had detected this flash. This incident had also been observed by the Arecibo Observatory in Puerto Rico, who also detected an unusual, fast-moving ionospheric disturbance. The US Navy's undersea sound surveillance system also recorded a distant, muffled thud. Something had, in fact, happened in the Atlantic Ocean. The question was, what? The Office of Science and Technology Policy was asked to re-examine the VELA Hotel 6911, or VELA 5B's data and to try to determine if this flash that the satellite had detected was indeed from a nuclear test. This incident and the outcome of this examination was of much importance to President Carter, who was campaigning for re-election at the time. A panel was assembled and began looking at the data, and they were skeptical about the blast being of nuclear origin. They pointed to the fact that only one of the two VELA satellites had picked up on the explosion on its sensors, though this could be explained by the fact that other satellites were simply looking at different parts of Earth, or that the weather conditions might have hindered them from picking up this event. Up until 1979, the satellites had recorded 41 atmospheric tests by countries such as France and the People's Republic of China, but none of these had been deemed as illicit explosions, and all of those tests had been confirmed. The VELA incident is the only one where the origin of the blast is unknown. The assembled panel would hypothesize that the double flash that was picked up by the satellite might have been caused by the impact of a micrometeoroid, a so-called CO.AG signal that mimics nuclear explosions, which has been received before. Many people still believe that this was a nuclear explosion. Initially, the suspicion fell on the Republic of South Africa, as it was said to have a covert nuclear weapons program at the time, and the geographic location fit. But the country had complied with the 1963 treaty. It was later stated in a report by the International Atomic Energy Agency that South Africa could not have constructed such a nuclear bomb until November 1979, which was 2 months after the VELA incident. In the report, the IAEA stated that all possible South African nuclear bombs had been accounted for. So the question then became, if it wasn't South Africa, then who was it? It wouldn't take long before suspicions fell on Israel. Before the VELA incident even occurred, there had been some suspicions that Israel possessed its own nuclear weapons. And over the years since the incident, many journalists and authors have reached the conclusion that the VELA incident was an Israeli nuclear test conducted in cooperation with South Africa. But even at the time it happened, many believed that Israel was responsible. This in turn has led to many arguing that the claim that the flash was just a natural phenomenon was simply an attempt to counter the growing opinion that Israel had been to blame, and that the US administration covered this up in order to avoid complicating relations with South Africa and Israel. The report from the panel noted that the data from the flash did share many similarities with a nuclear explosion, but that their examination and investigation led them to doubt that the recorded flash was indeed a nuclear event. Even though they could not rule out the possibility that this was a nuclear explosion, they concluded that if the sensors of the VELA satellite were working as intended, then this was most likely just a CO.AG signal. This conclusion by this panel has been met with a lot of criticism, with many arguing that this panel had been politically motivated. It wouldn't be a conspiracy theory if it didn't involve a government covering something up, and that's what most people think happened in this case. One such person was a former member of the NRC by the name of Victor Galinsky. He argued that the Carter administration was trying to mediate peace in the Middle East, and if the VELA incident had truly been a nuclear explosion, it would put the Carter administration in a very awkward position, one that they most likely were hoping to avoid. Leonard Weiss, who at the time was staff director of the Senate Subcommittee on Energy and Nuclear Proliferation, argued that the Carter administration had to think about the political ramifications of a test if one had indeed taken place. If this had been a nuclear test, then arguments would be made for the detection equipment not being reliable, which in turn would make many question the United States' ability to detect any nuclear explosion by the Soviet Union. There was also the fact that if this was a nuclear test, then there was a nation that was in violation of the 1963 treaty. But it would also be a violation of the 1977 Glenn Amendment to the Arms Export Control Act, which mandated an end to arms assistance. According to Vice, Carter was gearing up for a re-election, and it was expected that he would run for re-election in 1980 based on his successes in non-proliferation and disarmament. Basically, most have the theory that this was a nuclear explosion that was covered up by the US government. There have been other countries suggested as the ones responsible, and I should mention them here. One such country is the Soviet Union. An argument for this was that the USSR had conducted secret underwater tests in the Pacific in 1959, which was a violation of the 1958 bilateral moratorium between the Soviet Union and the US. The argument here was basically, they did it before, they could do it again. Other countries that have been briefly suggested were India, Pakistan, or France. Due to the fact that some information about this event still remains classified by the US government, a lot of conspiracy theories have been formed regarding this incident, and I mentioned a few of them in the video. Today, most believe that the VELA incident was indeed a nuclear explosion. And today, most have come to the conclusion that it was a test conducted by Israel, that the US covered up. But what do you think? Do you think this was a conspiracy theory where the government covered up an actual nuclear test? Or do you think that it was a natural phenomenon, or even that the satellites malfunctioned?